Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Derby City Council Cabinet on the 8th of December at 4 p.m. Well, it should have been at 4 p.m. Apologies for being slightly late. It was due to my late arrival due to an appointment. But we are present and quorate, and so I think we can carry on. So item 2 on the agenda will be late items, which there is one which has been accepted by Cabinet. We will deal with that at the end of the proceedings. Karen, yes? Okay. Receipt of petitions, there are none. Identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply. There are none. Declarations of interest, please. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of November. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, I have. Okay, bear with me. It was much easier when we got paper copies of these things. Sorry, yes, so the 21st of December today, and the minutes that we need to agree were the 8th of December. You're quite right, Councillor Smale. Okay, so matters referred. We would normally have recommendations of the Executive Scrutiny Board, but that was not able to be held last night, so we don't have any recommendations, and members of the board had the opportunity to comment, but we haven't received any comments from the Exec Board members. Okay, so it moves us straight to item... Sorry, yes.
Can I just make a comment there? As you'll know, at the leaders' briefing last week, it was agreed to look at options of various meetings this week in order to reduce the risk of spreading COVID, which most group leaders supported. But we were reassured the only agenda item, the only recommendation on the budget report, which wasn't available at the time, as it came out on Friday, would in fact be recommendation 2.1, which was to open public consultation. There's 2 further recommendations on that report now, which is moving a significant amount of money from one reserve to another, and also a pot of money to allow a voluntary severance package to be delivered. It was too late to rearrange executive scrutiny, and both items, which I think warrant, and I hope everybody agrees, do warrant scrutiny. Could I recommend to you that Cabinet consider item 2.1 and 2.2 and 2.3 are deferred to a meeting in January?
Clearly, when we had the leaders' meeting, I wasn't aware of anything else on the agenda, or I wouldn't have said so, and the officers present didn't know the details of what you just referred to, but I don't think the answer is going to be that we recommend that we defer it. And Councillor Smale has some information and wants to impart to us.
Thanks, Chair. I've had a conversation with Simon regarding this, and we can't stop the recommendation of 2.1. We need to approve the consultation. So I think you might have just misquoted yourself there, Councillor Shanker. But the items 2.2 and 2.3 are more housekeeping for the next. So I am happy to defer those to the next Cabinet meeting in January to allow for greater scrutiny. So there is no issues. It's not going to stop us from determining any factors. The main important situation is to get the consultation up and running. And I'm personally happy as the Cabinet member for Finance to defer 2.2 and 2.3 to January. So it does allow for extra scrutiny of other councillors. So I can approve those 2 deferrals.
Okay, thank you for that. As I say, at the time, we weren't aware of them, but they were put forward there are technical movement of monies to be able to facilitate the voluntary redundancy payments that are necessary. But if we can manage to defer them until later, then that's fine. You comfortable with that?
Yep, absolutely, and thanks for that, Jonathan.
Okay, so Simon, going to lead out on this one, on item 8. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And first of all, just to highlight to members that the government only announced their provisional local government finance assessment on Thursday afternoon, and this paper was produced within 24 hours to be issued on Friday, following it being put on the agenda when it was formally issued on Tuesday of last week. So this report details the Council's 3-year medium-term financial plan, and obviously the medium-term financial plan supports the Council plan priorities, so it's the resourcing of the Council plan and its priorities, which is the next item on the agenda. And both the MTFP and the Council plan are going to be issued for consultation subject to the agreement of Cabinet tonight. We have, in this sort of a budget, tried to align and focus on what are the needs of the city as we go forward, obviously influenced by our recent history in terms of the pandemic, but also in trying to articulate the ambitions for the city that we have. And you'll notice that the report references the vision of being ambitious for Derby with the city, for the city. This budget is set against a background of turmoil in society's needs, turmoil in terms of the national and international economic sort of position, and in rising inflation in many countries, including this country, and also significant pressures on demands for our services, both statutory and discretionary. So this budget, it's been necessary to plan for addressing those additional pressures and prudently providing for it, but also to plan for reductions in the council spend. We have aligned our budget's approach around 4 partnership themes, which were developed as part of a citywide partnership board around the themes of resilient Derby, green Derby, growth Derby, vibrant Derby, and a corporate transformation programme of working smarter, and all the proposals which are detailed in the appendix reference that. Also, in looking at the context of this report, we have been aware that we want to try and create a council plan that can be ambitious against creating longer-term financial sustainability of the council going forward, not only to respond to shocks that we might experience, like the pandemic, but also to allow us to plan with certainty changes which fulfil that vision of being ambitious for Derby, for and with the city. So there is, in the reserve section of this report, and it was shared on the 8th of December, an intent to try and plan for improving our level of general fund balance and our MTFP smoothing reserve, which in Derby has traditionally been called the budget risk reserve. So the key objectives of this report, just to give it the context, is to ensure that effective financial planning contributes to the delivery of a council plan. It's to ensure that we remain financially resilient, stable and sustainable for the future. It's to maximise the income from council tax and business rates to support the priorities of the council. Indeed, that is inherent in the government funding announcement of the core spending power. And it's to plan for future resources available and to estimate expenditure requirements to ensure value for money. So this budget is again centred around those principles of what the Audit Commission used to say, the 3 E's: economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And it focuses on outcomes, and it focuses on the impact that our resources against our plans deliver. So just to maybe take you through some of the sections in here, just to unpick it a bit. Paragraph 4.3 talks about the risks and influences affecting the medium-term financial plan. You can see there's some significant national and local impact. And I draw your attention particularly to the paragraphs from 4.3.11 onwards in respect of children's social care demand. You can see the graph on that page in 4.3.12 talks about the number of contacts and referrals that we are experiencing. And that has increased significantly from what was the position in 2018-19, 2019-20. Not all referrals, because of our systems, our approach, our front door, translate into children being put into our care. But you can see that there's a pressure that needs to be recognised in that space. And then the graph on the following page talks around our total looked after children, which you can see from the graph is plateauing and has plateaued in this year around the 640 children. But you can see there in the bold bar charts the increase in cost that we've experienced due to a dysfunctional and strained care market for children. And indeed, we're seeing that now translating into the adult social care market as that is becoming increasingly strained and stretched in terms of that market. So this budget has had to respond and within the pressures and within the narrative to the increasing demand for support to our most vulnerable in society, and that's a key role of the council. The report talks about the government agenda in terms of some of the things they incentivise us for, such as new homes bonus, building houses in the city and a reward attached to that. But it also talks about the assumptions in here, which is around the government and the core spending power, assumes that councils will increase their council tax by the maximum. And for this year, that maximum is 1.99% for council services and 1% for adult social care. That's hard baked into the government funding assumptions. And the graph on page 10, the split between government funding and council tax illustrates that. We've had to make increased provision for pay awards, both for the current year, which the pay award is still to be settled, and also for future years. And we have also recognised the impact on areas such as our collection fund, where, for example, the difficulty of getting court time to issue summonses is obviously impacting on the recovery of outstanding debt. And later on in the report, it talks about we have reduced prudently the assumed collection rates to 97% from 97.5% to recognise that that has had a financial impact on obviously not being able to raise as much income as we would have anticipated in February. So overall, there's a table in paragraph 4.5.5 which talks about the budget gap that we forecast in February, which was 13.667, and the budget gap that we are forecasting now, which is 13.924. That table does illustrate there are budget gaps to be addressed through service reviews, transformation and other interventions in 23-24 of 9.924 million, rising up by 4 million the following year. Just for illustration there, that includes the assumed contribution to reserves that we wish to put into our medium-term financial plan to increase the resilience and financial sustainability of the council. On paragraph 4.5.10, it talks about the savings and pressures that the council has had to propose in this budget report. So an increase of 11.534 in savings and income generation proposals, and there's been an increase in costs, both demand and inflation, of 13.019 million for next year in terms of the pressures. I think that illustrates both the magnitude and the sort of the response that was required to deliver a balanced budget for the next financial year. Just for clarity, a balanced budget does allow the council in a sustainable fashion to use reserves, and this budget assumes just over £4 million worth of reserves as part of the budget strategy. The report then talks about some of the summary for pressures and savings. So, and especially in the savings, there's proposals in this report totalling 16.558 million against the 4 partnership themes over the next 3 years, and that's detailed in the appendix. Just maybe to then summarise the report, as part of this, there's been the need to look at all areas of the council, including the impact on our workforce. The table on paragraph 4.7.2 talks about the proposal is to reduce the workforce by an estimated 51.17 full-time equivalents, of which 18.59 came from people expressing an interest in voluntary redundancy, and in the recommendation that is being deferred to the January Cabinet or for the future consideration. The cost of that is detailed in there at over 300,000. Then there's a deletion of vacant posts, of 19 vacant posts, and a potential reduction in the rest of the workforce of 13.37 full-time equivalents. In the context of having to save, as I said, 13 million in the next financial year, we have tried to minimise the impact on our hard-working workforce in respect of this, but it was necessary to look across the council. The report details the proposed transfer of reserves, which, as was described by the portfolio holder, is a technical review that happens on a regular basis. That's detailed in paragraph 4.8.3. And for clarity, we've also detailed the level of the general fund balance reserve and the budget risk reserve for the next 3 years in the table of 4.8.5. So that's a revenue budget, and I'll just quickly go on to the capital budget. The capital budget recommends a budget, an investment programme of 291 million over the next 3 years. The details are in the appendix. This programme is designed to be ambitious for a city and have a major impact on the city. The images in there talk about some of what the capital programme has helped secure in the past year and going forward, such as a performance venue, the smart park development of nearly 5,000 jobs to be built out in Spondon, our city, our river, and the nuclear advanced manufacturing research centre, and also the significant work, and again there's an image in there, in respect of a Moorways swimming pool, which is scheduled to open in the spring of this year. All the capital costs and financial costs of that are contained within the budget. In 4.9.12 it talks about some of the additional schemes that have been added into the capital programme, including additional allocations for highways maintenance, sort of flood defence, investment in the museum as part of match funding for the MEND Museum Estates Development Fund, and you can see that in the report. Probably just to say there that the future funding of capital programmes through Levelling Up, through another shared prosperity funds, and also our role in reshaping the city with our capital ambition to be ambitious but in partnership, means that we will be creating and developing a new ambitious capital investment strategy for future, recognising that mixture of future funding sources. The likelihood is that we might have to bid for some of those, like the Levelling Up Fund, and also our increased confidence in the city from investors that maybe a lot of future investment might be done in partnership with future people. So the report details the approach towards that, and also in one of the appendices talks about the areas that have been, in a sense, considered as part of that, and we will bring that back to Cabinet in due course. And finally, Chair, the report also sets down, based on the assumption in this report, which is a 1.99% increase in council tax and a 1% adult social care precept, the council tax for each of the bands. I draw your attention in that table to the number of people, just over 17,000 people who are in receipt of council tax support. So they obviously get support in line with our local council tax scheme in respect of payment of council tax. So overall, this report details the report that I hope Cabinet will approve tonight to issue for consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for that high-level view on this budget proposal that we're proposing to put out for consultation. Can I just say thank you to you and Alison and the whole of the team for the work that you've had to put in. I'm very conscious that the late statement from government in relation to the local government settlement caused you a lot of angst and awkwardness and time and late nights and things. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much for the detail that you managed to get into this report. Jonathan, do you want to come now or after?
Just to start things off, Chair. Yeah, I just want to echo the same words that you just said in relation to the finance team and being able to deliver this MTFP and budget ready for consultation. It wasn't far from ideal, to be honest, with the late notification of our financial settlement. But in the end, after a very long Thursday night, we managed to get this document going. I just wanted to highlight some of for me, the key issue surrounding the finances is obviously children's services, and obviously we have an absolute right that we must look after our most vulnerable in the city. And as Simon has clearly highlighted, that our looked after children has plateaued in the last year, which is a welcoming sign. But as you can see, that inflation costs have contributed to a significant increase in pressure in our services. And I think it totals for around about 14% increase. So it does reinforce the message that we do have a broken care market. And I think we all acknowledge that. Myself and Councillor Williams have been lobbying central government to try and resolve that, fix that, and to more than happy to call out the pressures that we do have in our social care services. And obviously the teams in Andy Smith's team in particular have been working around the clock to try and be creative in how we can better look after our children and adult social services teams. And, and the following year, we've obviously baked into some of those pressures. Obviously, we've incurred £7.922 million in pressures in children's services. We do have some savings attributed to that, but we've obviously increased the core spending in children's services of roughly around about 5.7 million. By all means, it doesn't necessarily mean that is going to be enough right now. And again, I'm quite happy to say that because we do have a duty to look after our children. And if we have to draw down reserves to cover that funding gap, we will do. But obviously, that doesn't mean that we have an unlimited amount of reserves. And obviously, we have planned for the next 2 financial years to try and build back some sustainability into the council. And ideally, we would like to do that over that 2-year period. So it puts the council in a sound financial setting. I think there might be a lot of questions coming away in the next couple of minutes. So what I will do, if it's all right, Chair, I'll yield now. And there might be any questions that me and Simon want to answer, and then we can go from there.
Okay, do we have any other questions, comments in relation to us agreeing to put this proposed budget out to consultation? Yes, Councillor Schenker.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by thanking the finance team for pulling this together. It isn't easy work, but all officers of the council who have contributed to this over a number of months. And I'm aware, as you will be, the challenge was pretty significant this year once again. And that's not just because of the pandemic, it's not just because of issues in this previous financial year, that's because of issues caused by 11 years of austerity, 11 years where local government hasn't been supported at all, 11 years in fact where local government's budgets have been slashed, making officers' jobs considerably harder than they need to be. I know this is, and thank Jonathan again for agreeing to move recommendations 2.2 and 2.3 to a further meeting so proper scrutiny it can be carried out. So in essence, we're just looking at moving to public consultation today. But I'll also just make a few high-level comments because I know we'll have opportunities at another time. Right at the start of the report at 1.1, it says, you know, this includes detailed plans for a balanced budget for 22-23. Well, in my simple terms, it doesn't do that at all. For me, a balanced budget would be if we spend within our means and you know, income versus expenditure is balanced and you end up net zero position. We're taking money once again before we've even started out of reserves. It's just not sustainable, and promising to put money back in future years doesn't cut the mustard with me. Budget risk reserve sat very healthily 3 years ago at around £30 million. I've said before, take that further 4.4 million or so out to next year, we're going to be in low single-digit numbers. It's not a good position for this council or any other council to be in. It's vital that the council understands its financial outlook and continues to plan effectively for the future. That's at 1.4. But again, I'm sorry to say this budget just does not do that. It fails to address the challenges in children's services. They are extensive, but if you look at what we're spending and have been spending in the last few years, you could simply predict we need more money in the budget than we're allowing for here. I can say with pretty certainly say we're just heading for a further overspend in 22-23 based on what we're provisioning for in this plan. Continuing to do the same thing and then expecting the outcome to be different is just insane. It can't be right, it's not sustainable, and we need to fundamentally address those issues. The budget once again raids very limited reserves, and I'm surprised that such a weak budget has made it this far. I hope during the public consultation with other stakeholders, consultation with members on a cross-party basis, will highlight that and changes can be made to this budget. Derby again is getting a bad deal. Maximum increase in council tax, 1.99%, plus the 1% social care preset again this year. 2.99%. It's the maximum you can increase this budget by. And I won't remind you of your election pledges to increase or limit the increase to the bare minimum. The bare minimum increase would be 0%. And I think in the backdrop of increasing inflation, the national insurance increase due, the cost of living spiralling, the least we could do as a local authority is support residents and have a minimum or 0% increase in council tax. Again, I look forward to debating that and hopefully influencing that over the coming weeks into next year. There's been a number of, unfortunately, mind-blowing waste over the last 3 years. I'll not dwell on it too much now. The market hall, the Guildhall's not moving anywhere. Beckett Well and the costs of the Beckett Well and the governance around the Beckett Well decision, not to forget the assembly rooms. And it's only just today I've learnt even the Padley Centre are saying the recently approved budget for the Padley Centre isn't value for money for the taxpayer. Yet, when we were screaming that in this place here, exec scrutiny were making those recommendations, this cabinet just nodded that through when I pleaded with you to actually just review that decision, take stock and come back, and I'm sure a better outcome would have been would have been found. It's a shame we're in this position. We've tried to work on a cross-party basis to influence this budget report prior to being published. You didn't allow us to do that, but we will now take our mandated responsibility as the opposition to try and influence this budget, working alongside, hopefully, Jonathan, to be able to do that so we reach a better conclusion for the residents of Derby.
Okay, Councillor Smiley, is any of those points you wish to respond to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, there's quite a few points out there that's been raised by Councillor Shanker. It's a shame we do get in the tit for tat. I would like to have hoped that would have changed the tact in my approach into being able to deliver a consultation budget. But just to go over some of the points in terms of reserves, I'd be happy to outline some of those that information that I've got. I mean, we did plan to use reserves. I mean, actually, I've actually searched and researched some of the detail, and thanks to officers for getting me this information since 2011 up to now. And obviously there was a planned use of reserves from 9.387 million, and the actual use of reserves has 16.352 million. And again, once I've said historically, well, quite often actually now in the last couple of cabinet meetings, that I make no excuses in using of reserves to cover social care. And obviously the social care overspend from that period, from 2011 to now, is around about 24.483 million. So obviously that means we've had to do a net savings of 17.52. And now, again, Councillor Shanker, I don't disagree with your comments in terms of children's services. And I can assure you that Councillor Williams is working her socks off to try and address some of those issues in that area. But we do, and I will make sure, we have to make sure that our most vulnerable and looked after children are cared for. And again, we are trying to build a budget that reduces the shocks and impacts of children's services, but we also have to do that with our MPs and ourselves in lobbying central government. And so, in terms of the social care overspend, that's been spanning for the last 10 years, and reserves have been used to net that off. There's many points that we could to look at in terms of, I take exception to some of the comments, Councillor Shanker, in terms of wasting money and not being, it's just this mudslinging, constant mudslinging. And I'd like to try and bring this to a contrite tone, to have these honest conversations in helping us to deliver a budget. And yet, I know we've had one meeting up to now, but I've still not received anything from any other councillors. And I'm hoping that once we open this consultation, that we'll be able to have some honest discussions. And if you want to have meetings with myself, I'm more than happy to do that. And there's nothing to say that what this budget is set is absolutely in stone. We have moved items out of the consultation, and we've even accepted recommendations historically from other groups to cater for the budget. So there's nothing in here that is set in stone. And if there is some legitimate ideas, if it's in terms of savings, efficiencies, or a particular item that you feel very strongly and passionate about, and we think that it can work into our services and work into our mandate as an administration, then I'd be more than happy to have those conversations. So I do take into consideration some of the points, but I think it has been an incredibly challenging year. And we have had a lot of extra government funding. I mean, we was given an additional 13.3 million last year from central government to cover off the COVID, and we have had an increase this year of government funding. It equates to, sorry, just let me pull up my figures, it equates to £10.9 million. But obviously, we do have those issues in children's services. So whilst the additional funding that we have received from central government is very welcoming, obviously we still need to make sure that we become a more efficient and self-sustaining council. So we will look to increase the budget, increase the, sorry, I've had a mind blank, increase the reserves, and that will always be an ambition. And I'm happy to have those conversations, how we can achieve that. And We are waiting on some key papers from national government, the white paper and certainly in levelling up. You know, there's already been some items that have come out there about fair funding for local councils, and there is potential for this council to actually increase its revenue budget because of the muting and some of the words that have actually come out from this paper. So there's no denying we've got challenges ahead of us, and I'm happy to have that burden on my shoulders as cabinet member for finance. So again, I'm looking forward to working with everyone. Whilst I acknowledge this is an extremely challenging budget, but I think it's one that we can navigate through in the next couple of years, and hopefully, when we have some stability around what is happening with the pandemic and COVID, because at the current moment it doesn't look like it's got any signs of abating. So let's build on with this consultation and get round together and pick out some key points where we can have a common cause and common goals in delivering for this city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sam, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, just for clarity, because I think we may have mentioned 2011 in one of those examples. The figures that Councillor Smale quoted was from 2018-19 onwards. Actually, from 2011 to 2017-18, the council had planned use of reserves of around £28 million over that period. In the period of the past 3 years, the planned use of reserves was 9.387. So I just wanted to give that factual answer, because I think, John, you may have said 2011 there, and it was 2018. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring you back in a second, Baggy. Just my comments on a couple of the things you referred to, and reserves is one of them. Clearly, you've just been told exactly what this use of reserves was before we came into administration and what it's been since. So there's probably a message there. But also, actually, if you look at the reserves of your colleagues in Nottingham City and Leicester City, in their budget rounds, Leicester City are proposing to use £31.7 million of reserves to balance their budget this year, and they have deficits of £56 and £77 million in the following 2 years. The Labour-controlled council in Nottingham aren't able to set a budget yet because they're still wondering where money's gone in the HRA and things like that. So at the moment they have to make savings of £28 million this year. That can't be done without using reserves in their position. And they have deficits of £28 and £32 million in the following 2 years. So evidently, they're comparable cities in the East Midlands and obviously experiencing similar and worse problems than we are. So whilst it's not desirable to be using the reserves, the full intention is to replace them as soon as possible. So you also went on to talk about council tax and the pledge to keep it to a minimum. Well, we've done exactly that. We are keeping the council tax rise to the minimum possible. No, it's the minimum possible because 1% is government assumed for adult care, and we can't balance the budget and we can't provide the services to the city that it needs without taking the other 2% rise. So practically it's the minimum that we can do in this budget. Although we could use £2 million more of reserves if you prefer. Well, you can't have your toast and eat it, so you're bread and buttered. So that's the position there. And then you referred to having opportunity to contribute. This budget process has been carried out in an entirely normal manner. Today is the day in which we put the proposed budget out for full consultation. You've had high-level consultations, you've had access to officers about the preparation of the budget. Now is the opportunity to properly scrutinise it. So it's a perfectly normal process. You've not been denied any opportunity. And maybe you can put some of your energies and activities into looking at the budget property and coming up with something that will help us to help the city to make this a savings budget and not a cutting budget. That's my perspective on it. Yes.
Yeah, just to come back into it, just to avoid any doubts on, I will hold my hands up. I read from the wrong column myself, but yes, absolutely, Simon is right. The actual social care overspend is from 2018, which is 24.483 million. And obviously we plan to use 9.3 million and we have had to use 16.3. So the use of reserves has been 7 million. And obviously we've had to make net savings in other areas at 17.52. So I just want to absolutely clarify myself in that misquoted of information earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Shanker, you want to come back?
Thank you. I'll first come back on your point about Nottingham and Leicester, Chris. I think that information's out there. My advice to you would be is Derby's got problems, concentrate on Derby and forget about Nottingham and Leicester. Your time would be better spent looking at Derby. As far as I know, all members in this room now and at full council are elected to represent Derby and not any other city. And your Spondon boundary sits in Derby as well, not in Nottingham. I just want to pull another point I forgot to mention earlier, and that's about the, we started my contribution and Jonathan's contribution and your contribution, thanking officers of this council, including senior officers. I'm told only at the beginning of last week, senior officers were called in and thanked for all their work, asked to prepare for further COVID restrictions that may or may not be upon us very soon, thanked for the work they've been doing for this council, and then a few days later a number of them were told 500,000 worth of you might not be needed going forward. A shocking way to deal with senior staff, to deal with any staff, and other measures should be looked at a time where we need resources at this council, experienced resources at this council. We decide to embark on a major senior restructure. And the last point I would make on that major senior restructure, it was only pointed out at exec scrutiny on the 7th of December, a couple of hours into the meeting, that there would be no restructure. And yet 4 weeks, or less than 4 weeks on, we're talking about having a restructure. Something's not right there. It's not very open and transparent. We're either having a restructure, and if we are, we should issue those details out and share with not just the employees affected, but members and the public what that restructure looks like. Taking an arbitrary figure of £500,000 and not knowing how the structure will match the needs of this city isn't the best way of going forward. Deleting posts randomly just because they're vacant now isn't a very strategic approach to savings either. The services we offer should be looked at and resourced and structured with members of staff accordingly, rather than just taking savings from blanket vacant posts. Some of them posts may be in really important areas where they should be filled, and we should have somebody doing that post rather than just taking that as a blanket saving. So again, a really important area, and an area which I hope we can have some positive dialogue on and try and minimise the impact on the council and the city.
Thank you, Councillor Shanker. It sort of goes to confirm my suspicions in the first place that you're not exactly sure how this council works and how the budget works, because it would be totally irresponsible for us and for the finance team not to consider issues regarding budgets both regionally and nationally. To set our budget, we must look at what's happening elsewhere and consider if there are things that are being, savings that are being made, things we could do to be able to provide the right budget for the city. So you're totally mistaken there. In respect of what's been said to you, what you've been told is that this budget is in response to partnership meetings and partnership decisions around the priorities for the city, and one of those was for the city to work smarter, and for us to do a corporate a corporate reorganisation, transformation to help us make those savings. Now, the decision in respect of the senior team savings that have been put forward is entirely in the hands of the chief executive. It's his role to manage his senior management team, and it's for him to propose and put forward and develop the savings that he's put forward. So it's not for us as the cabinet to dictate to the chief executive how he runs his senior management team. So that's just for your information how the council runs, Councillor Schenker. And just on terms of jobs, well, less than 60 jobs compared to the 300 to 500 that you saw in your crystal ball, just shows how out of touch you are, doesn't it? Ruth, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. I too want to give my thanks to Simon and all his staff and the staff across the council who have been involved in having to come up with proposals for savings and cuts to be made due to the level of funding and the economic outlook that we are facing. I found it very intriguing that at 4.3.7, when talking about the exit from the European Union, it says the Council is prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that the EU exit presents, and doesn't actually tell us what those advantages are. So please could I have a list of those advantages? Moving on from that, looking through the savings proposals, some look like they're going to be a lot easier to achieve than others, mainly because some of those, the more difficult ones, are very much constrained by people, service users' legal entitlements and other such things. So some I don't think are going to be very achievable. Whereas there's other things that aren't on the list, which, probably could be called icing on the cake, that may well be a lot more sensible to consider. So we shall certainly be in the future talking with Councillor Smale about that, and hopefully to get some better things. We certainly are concerned with some of the proposals and the knock-on effects that they are going to have, not perhaps immediately, but certainly over the years, particularly with things like early intervention and with families who are experiencing difficulties. That cutting back on that sort of thing is never a good idea. You just store up more trouble for yourself and the families in the future, and more expenditure. It doesn't actually cut expenditure. All you're doing is really sort of throwing in the towel and saying, well, we'll just allow demand for the various services, whether it's council services or police services, whatever, health services, to just spiral. And I do feel there needs to be much more of a sort of a heavy kind of blueprint of, the sort of the strategic things, that the boxes that have to be ticked to what makes a sensible savings proposal and what does not make a sensible savings proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on the Brexit side of things, but Ruth, just to remind you, these are officers' proposals and recommendations for reorganisation, savings, etc., service reviews, etc., which they've not put forward blindly. They've spent a lot of time working on, thinking about, and coming up with, we understand and we accept, achievable savings. So there is a consultation period. Absolutely, there's every opportunity to look at potential knock-on effects and reconsider if necessary, but and maybe Yvonne might want to comment on the early interventions side of things. But for me, if we can do things smarter and better and provide an even better service while saving some money, then that's what we should do. Jonathan, did you want to come in? Or
Yeah, just to, I mean, I don't know if Councillor Williams wants to go first on the early intervention, and I'll come in after.
Yvonne?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of issues really that I would like to comment on. I'll take that last part first in terms of early intervention. As everyone will be aware, we have been working really hard. We've expanded our early intervention teams and capability. We've got the new Staying Together team that are working really hard and have been really effective in keeping young people at home with their families, safely with their families, rather than coming into care. And that team has been very effective. And we continue to expand that team, and we'll be looking at other ways that we can work on that early intervention. So we aren't making those cuts there. And if there is icing on the cake that you want to talk about, please do tell us about it. I've said this again and again. I haven't got all the answers. My teams haven't got all the answers. Nobody in the country has got all the answers, because we wouldn't be in the difficulty that we are with social care. But we're open to suggestions. We've been meeting in the Demand Management Board, and we have worked extremely hard. And I think some of the words that Councillor Shanker used, as in he said that we're continuing to do the same thing, that's just not fair. That is an absolute disservice to all of the work that our officers have been doing, to our social workers, our family support workers, the foster carers, the adopters, our home carers at home, in our homes, our partners, the voluntary sector, our taxi drivers that we've been working with in partnership to improve our services. It is an absolute disservice. We are not continuing to do the same thing. We are looking at ways that we can improve the services, that we can enhance the offers to our residents, to our children and young people, and to ever look at ways that we can improve. It's not necessarily all about savings. It's about system change sometimes, and that takes a long time to do. So I really wish that people would think first before they say that things like we're continuing to do the same thing. We're not. We are being really innovative in some areas about the work that we're doing. We are working so hard to try and make those differences. And I, again, will make the offer that I've made before, that Councillor Smell's made tonight. Come and talk to me. Come and speak to me about it. Nobody has done that. And, you know, I've been very open to doing that. I'm open to any ideas that are out there. We talk constantly with our colleagues in other authorities, and we look at what they're doing. If they're doing it better than us, we ask them how they've done it. We learn from what they're doing. We also share good practice for what we're doing. And that's really important that we do that. So, you know, I don't accept that we're continuing to do the same thing. We are not. We never have been, and we will continue to strive to improve the service that we offer to our children, young people and our residents of the city.
Thank you, Yvonne. Councillor Smell.
Thanks, Chair. I couldn't agree more with what Councillor Williams has just said there. I think the teams that have been working very innovative to deliver services, and we can't stress it enough. You know, our doors are open. If in fact, you know, we know the pressures that we have in children's services, and me and Yvonne would be happy to share a meeting together with other councillors, as we know it's quite an emotive issue, and quite rightly so, because we have our duties to look after our most vulnerable. But there is one bit that I would like to pick out that I haven't so far, which is about commercialisation of our council. I think we do need to become more 21st century now, and that by selling our services, in particular our street pride services, so we can expand it across more income generation. I think that is a key aspect of sustainability of a council. Lots of other councils across the UK have started doing that, and actually have by that joined up thinking and cooperative way of communicating with other local authorities, there has been some new ways of working and how we can make our council more commercial. And that in particularly is something that we really want to make a bigger impact in moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years, because there is some real big commercial abilities for all of us to ensure our services are delivered effectively. So I do think that commercialisation has a big part to play in helping as a council to make savings but also improve efficiencies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments, questions?
So can I just recommend that we move to recommendations 2.1 and 2.4, which is obviously 2.4 is to note the budget, the consultation.
Okay, can that be agreed? Then so be it. 2.1 and 2.4 agreed, Karen. Okay, which moves us on to the next item, which is about introducing our fabulous new council plan developed by Heather and her team. Again, thank you to you, Heather, for your work in relation to this, and particularly for shaping it around, or help shape the budget around the plan that's been developed on a partnership basis through the partnership board and other areas, and which has included cross-party membership in these partnership meetings and things. So we've come up with, well, I'll let you describe it, Heather, because you're much better at it than me. So, yeah, over to you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I am pleased to present the draft council plan for 22 to 25 for consultation. As I think we've been discussing, the last 2 years have been challenging for all sectors as we work to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. We've looked for new ways to work together across the city. And certainly I think we have recognised that we can deliver so much more when we collaborate. We have delivered at pace, focusing on our communities first, and we've been creative to deliver better outcomes, as we have seen through our city recovery work. Despite the challenges brought on by the increasing demands for services and the pandemic, we remain ambitious in our plans for the City of Derby. Our council plan sets out the vision and the long-term goals for our city and describes the shared outcomes that we want to achieve with our partners, the action we will take, and most importantly, the differences that local residents and businesses will see. Excuse me. To make sure that our council plan remains fit for purpose and appropriately aligned with both our partnership priorities and our resources as set out by our medium-term financial plan, it's proposed that the council plan for our current council plan for 19 to 23 is replaced. The updated plan, which is shown in Appendix 1, reflects the strong partnership working in place with our residents, businesses and communities, and very much reframes our vision in terms of ambitious for Derby, working with the city for the city, as we heard in our first paper. The priorities for the future will be focused around the 4 partnership themes. So they are green city, protecting and enhancing our environment, a city of growth, creating a modern, smart city with jobs and skills for the future, vibrant city, reimagining our city with culture at its heart, and resilient city, working with our communities to improve health, wealth and opportunities. These themes have been co-produced and adopted by our citywide partnership board based on the engagement that's taken place over the last 12 months. These themes will help to support planning, cooperation and collaboration across the city as we move forward. In addition to these themes, the council plan also contains key outcomes for its Working Smarter programme of transformation and improvement. Cabinet are asked to approve the start of consultation on the draft council plan with citizens, colleagues, partners and other stakeholders, and to also note that an equality impact assessment will be completed over the next month or so, and also to note that in due course we will prepare a delivery plan that contains a lot of the detail around the actions that can inform our business planning as a council, and that will be developed by April 2022. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Heather. I think it's an exciting council plan that we're going to go out to consultation on, and we've consulted already greatly with the partnership and with other groups in the council on this in the preparation of this plan. I think the 5 themes are entirely right. We have ambition to be a green council and to reach our targets. We certainly have an ambition for growth, and our capital programme shows that with all the investment that we have already made and achieved, and the investment and the funding that we aim to achieve in the future to be able to create a vibrant city, one of the other themes, and a resilient city to be able to build on the assets that we already have in terms of our manufacturing base, but also to diversify through things like Smart Park, the offer of the city and the jobs that we provide in the city. So, and certainly smarter digital is the way forward, and corporate transformation is also necessary in order to deliver the services in a smarter, better, financially more sound way. So the plan is there. It, like the consultation for the budget, it's out there for people to come out in and comment on, and commend it to everybody that hopefully will look at it. Did you want to come in, Councillor Schenker? Thank you.
I did. Thank you, Chair. I think the vast majority of this ambitious council plan, as you call it, can be supported. It's how we support it and deliver it which is more important to me. One bit I will point out, though, under sustainable waste and transport, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't. Our must-dos, implement a refreshed waste management strategy to increase waste reused or recycled, managing the volume of waste sent to landfill. Absolutely agree with that. Support Derby as a centre of excellence for future fuels technology. Absolutely support that. One thing I'm really concerned about, and I'm not sure who would know about this, who not, because the reports were on pink papers and confidential, but in the our must-dos, it talks about delivering a waste disposal treatment plant, and then inverted commas, a new waste disposal facility. I thought that decision's not been made yet, and we may not have a waste plant at all, and we're spending lots of money, a considerable amount of money with consultants to go and do that piece of work. Yet in our plan it says we're having a new facility, and it seems to rule out the option of not using Sinfin Lane already in our plan. Is this just a left-hand, right-hand issue, or is it a little bit more cynical than that?
I think it's probably lack of understanding on your part, Councillor Schenker, but because the report that came to Cabinet not so long ago that clearly set out the options, and you understand and you know that work's ongoing, has been going for some time, and will be ongoing until it can be resolved. Councillor Smale, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, there's no predetermination here at all. Obviously, we've had, and what's in the public domain is correct, that we have gone to a business plan for 2 scenarios, which has been detailed in press releases and ourselves. But Simon, can you just, is it 2008, our waste strategy document? Can you just for clarity, what year was it when the waste strategy was first set out? Can you just confirm?
I haven't got the exact dates, but obviously the joint approach to waste disposal was agreed by both county council and the city council many years ago. I'd have to go and find the exact dates.
I think what we'll do then is we'll clarify that. But the waste strategy paper is a live document. It's a document that has been set, and that hasn't changed. So whilst we are going to a business case on that scenario with regards to the waste treatment plant.
Councillors, can I just urge caution, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we do have it in our waste in our waste strategy in that area. So it's not left and right. That is ongoing, and when that comes to Cabinet, we'll be making that detailed argument then.
Put it simply, Councillor Schenker, this just acknowledges the need to resolve our waste treatment strategy, and that will be done.
Come back in on that.
Ruth, did you want to let Ruth come first, and then I'll bring you back in if there's anything else?
Just again on waste strategy. I believe now that brown bins, if people want one, they don't have to actually pay for it, to the actual physical bin being delivered to them. And obviously the service has been free for a while. I think that could do with a lot more muscular publicity, because I think if you look down any street, certainly if you happen to be driving home when people's bins are out, when it's blue bin day, there's not many brown bins around. And obviously some years ago it used to be the case that everybody had a brown bin. And I'm not surprised people are putting stuff they shouldn't be putting in the black bin, which should be going into a brown bin, for the want of them having a brown bin. Whether we need to have a look at some of the hoops people have to jump through, like having to register that they want a brown bin. It might be a lot easier to think of something a bit easier that people can do, or that they don't actually have to do, but just we have a list of the properties where we collect brown bins, or who have got brown bins because they've requested them. Why not just deliver to all the other properties that obviously are a suitable nature, but just to get the numbers up significantly, so we can get our tonnage down that has to go to landfill at the moment.
Obviously, this is part of the strategy for encouraging recycling.
Yeah, but it's
I agree. We can maybe
do
get the message
fairly
out more.
swiftly, yeah.
But actually, this time of year, a lot of brown bins don't come out because there's not a lot of brown bin waste this time of year. Spring, we want to be ready for spring. We want when people do clear their gardens, and we want to give everybody the opportunity to, because it's infinitely preferable for waste to be disposed of in the brown bin than the other two. So, I accept your point.
Exactly, though. I think certainly people are still doing cutting back and stuff now. I am.
So, some are, but not as many as normally as other times of the year. Autumn and spring are the times when the brown bins get full.
But preparing for the spring now would be a good idea.
Okay. Councillor Schenker.
Sorry, Karen. I hear what both yourself and Councillor Smale are saying, and I was at the Cabinet meeting, and I respect what the Monitoring Officer is saying about urging caution and going into too much detail, but the two don't sit together. It specifically says in the plan, our must-dos is to deliver a waste disposal treatment plant, and then it talks about a new waste disposal facility. But that decision is not made. How can it be in the plan? Can I just invite you on this occasion, and Jonathan's been quite reasonable today, is just take that bullet point out of the plan. I think it's probably the safest way, rather than say we are having it or aren't having it, is for now, whilst that decision's under review and a business case for both options is being drawn up as reported in the press.
Can I suggest that
Sorry?
we discuss the semantics of that one sentence offline, please?
I think it's fair enough to just ask for it to be removed.
I would just think it would be easier and more sensible to discuss it offline, that one sentence, please.
As usual, I'm going to take the advice of the officers and consider it offline on this occasion. On something else? Okay, good.
Thanks, Chair. I want to thank Heather and the team for bringing this council plan forward. And there were some really good aspects involved in this, like the Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. I mean, the skills involved in that, the jobs that will bring along with the Infinity Derby project. Obviously, we've got Smart Park, 5,000 jobs with easy access to our road networks that can provide jobs for everyone in Derby. We've also got the Centre of the UK Rail bid, and I know the Labour group are positively supporting that, which is fantastic. We also have, numerous regeneration projects that are moving forward. Obviously, we've got more ways coming online next year. The council's obviously got the City of Culture. And then there was obviously some brilliant programmes such as the Derby Football Hub, which is going to be a fantastic scheme to help inclusivity in football with state-of-the-art football pitches. So there is many great aspects in this council plan that we should all take pride of, whether we as the administration or as any opposition member. And I think there's a lot of schemes in there, and I think we all agree with what Councillor Skelton has just said in relation to brown bins. Obviously, that's something that's quite passionate towards me, because it was one of my first agendas in bringing the brown bin scheme back. And obviously, we will still keep pushing that agenda out, and you're quite right in saying that we've got new additional blue bins, brown bins, free of charge, so if people can use them, by all means, we'll get them out there. That will certainly help reduce the use of our residual bin. We also have, housing strategies come forward. I know Yvonne's still working on, the corporate fostering, as well as the Poverty Commission, but also what me and Andy Bramwell are working on right now is the digital poverty strategy, which feeds into the city fibre, the gigabit network economy, because 5G and all of our smarter way of working, which is a common theme in what we've been saying. So there is some very, very positive aspects in this report, and I think if everyone's got time, all councillors, to read it and just look about what we can do to improve the city of Derby and that collaboration of working with our partners across the city. Thank you.
Okay, so unless there's any other comments or questions, then the recommendations are at 2.1 to 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Thank you, Heather, for that. So that leaves us with the late item, which I understand, Emily, probably you'll be introducing in relation to securing the way forward in relation to meetings during COVID.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is a noting report intended to provide Cabinet with clarity in respect to the continuation of open, transparent and democratic decision-making during the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular given rising case rates as a result of the Omicron variant. As Cabinet will be aware, the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority, police and crime panel meetings England and Wales Regulations 2020 came into force on the 4th of April 2020 and was and that legislation permitted remote meetings of council business to take place. Those flexibility regulations expired on the 6th of May 2021 and were not able to be extended. High Court rulings in April and May 2021 found that under the provisions of the Local Government Act, meetings must take place at a single specified location, and that being present at such a meeting involved physical presence at the meeting. The rulings also clarified that such meetings should be open to the public and that online access did not in itself meet the statutory criteria. Council is therefore obliged to continue holding its meetings in public until the legislative position changes. The purpose of this report is to detail a series of practical measures to ensure constituted meetings can take place safely, and in drafting this report we have consulted with the City's Director of Public Health. Our meetings will continue to be held in accordance with the risk assessment and guidance produced by Democratic Services and the general risk assessments in place for the use of council buildings. Members of the public will be encouraged to watch proceedings online via the council's YouTube channel. If cases continue to rise and there is no change in the legal position, by political agreement, councillors may voluntarily reduce the numbers in attendance at public meetings, provided the quorum for the meeting is still met, and Democratic Services will facilitate this arrangement if required. Officer attendance at committees will also be minimised, with councillors encouraged to seek advice on reports following their publication and prior to the meeting taking place. In consultation with the chairs of committees and boards, meetings will be assessed on a case-by-case basis and may be postponed if there is no time-sensitive business to be considered. If, on the advice of the Director of Public Health, public meetings can no longer be safely convened, or we enter a lockdown period which prevents in-person meetings and there is no legislative change, the Leader of the Council may take decisions on any executive matter in case of urgency, and similarly, the Chief Executive holds a similar standing delegation in respect of urgent non-executive matters in consultation with group leaders. Obviously, it is not our intention to use those delegations at the current time. So there is some further sort of legal details set out in the report, but Chair, I would simply ask Cabinet to note the arrangements set out in this report and to note the recommendation at 2.1. Any questions?
Just briefly, Chair. It's just at 4.8, and the report's fine. I think it's pragmatic, it's sensible approach, but it's just the use of the word on any executive matter. I just think that gives scope. It could be pretty significant. There's no financial limit to that. There's no impact limit to that, and irrespective of politics, it is in the hands of a politician rather than the chief executive. I think in these circumstances, if them powers should be used, it may be in consultation with all group leaders, but the decision-making authority should remain with the chief executive.
Sorry, Chair. The Constitution specifically delegates responsibility on any executive matter in the event of urgency to the Leader of the Council, and that's what we would be applying. However, obviously, where there are financial consequences that would normally go to the budget, there would normally be council non-executive matters, and those would fall to the chief exec in those circumstances.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, caught me off guard there, wasn't we? Yeah, I think I appreciate that, obviously, the circumstances surrounding COVID and where we're heading to now. Obviously, tonight we've met as a minimum quorum because we wanted to keep numbers down, and I appreciate group leaders in helping doing that in other meetings elsewhere, but I know Councillor Barker isn't here tonight for the reasons where we were trying to alternate the cabinet members around to make the risk assessment compliant. But I know Councillor Barker is very hot on the heels in relation to trying to push government into having hybrid meetings and having some of those executive decisions made back to remote online meetings that we had in 2020. And I'm pretty sure he will be pushing on for that much further. I'm a big fan of hybrid meetings. I think there's a lot of positivity we can get out of that for all sorts of logistical reasons, as councillors are very busy and it's not always easy to get into the city centre on a night meeting at 6 p.m. So I would ideally like to see more hybrid meetings become a permanent fixture in future to enable better engagement from all councillors.
Okay, thank you. Probably a sensible report to bring forward. Councillor Barker has been chasing this for many months through the LGA and with local government, or through local government agencies and various places for clarity, because just an observation, I think there has been and there probably will be still some different interpretations of the rules and regulations in relation to this, and it's been applied very differently across the country. We do look across the country as to what other people are doing for best practice, but I get details passed to me of in various forums where different things have been applied. So the simpler we can keep it, the safer we can keep it, and we won't be abusing the process. So it probably makes sense to have the report and note it as such. Can that be so noted? Good. Okay. I think, Karen, that completes the business of this afternoon's cabinet, yes? Yes. Merry Christmas to everybody.